Welcome to the tutorial on auditing. In this tutorial, we are going to learn about the audit evidence and audit procedures. What are the evaluative criteria for selection of audit evidence? As an auditor, whenever you are applying your judgment, you need to be careful while evaluating the evidences, because before providing your opinion, you will need to apply your judgment based on the evaluation of audit evidences. And for that purpose, the following factors should be kept in mind in gathering audit evidences, such as the auditor should consider the relevance, reliability, sufficiency, cost effectiveness, convenience, preservation, materiality of the assertion to be tested, need for corroboration or resolution of inconsistency, accepted auditing standards, or agreed upon procedures to obtain evidence. These are the factors, issues or matters or elements that should be considered by an auditor while evaluating the audit evidence. For the purpose of auditing, the auditor may need to apply audit sampling, because performing audit on all the items or all the elements of financial statements or performing the audit on all the transactions would be a very difficult work. That is why audit sampling can be used for doing the audit. Audit sampling means the application of audit procedures to less than 100% of the items within an account balance or class of transactions to enable the auditor to obtain and evaluate audit evidence about some characteristics of the items selected in order to form or assist in forming a conclusion concerning the population. Here the population means the whole respondents or whole items on which the opinion will be formed. That means from the whole items or whole transactions or whole accounts, if the auditor select items less than 100%, then that type of procedure of selecting less than 100% items is considered as audit sampling, and this audit sampling can be used at the time of audit procedure for forming the opinion about the population. At the time of designing the audit sample, the auditor need to consider the following three aspects. The first one is the auditor should know what is the specific audit objective and what is the population from which the sample is chosen and what would be the sample size. The first one is the auditor should know the specific audit objective. We can see the auditor should be clear about the specific audit objective in relation to an audit exercise and what audit procedures are to be applied for achieving the audit objective. That means for the purpose of achieving the audit objective, the auditor need to know what is the specific audit objective. Based on that specific audit objective, the auditor can exercise his or her duty for doing the audit. And the second issue for designing the audit sampling is the auditor should know the population. The population is the base from which the auditor selects sample to draw conclusions. Suppose you are going to audit the transactions, and if there are 100 transactions, then all the transactions would be considered as population, and if you don't take all the transactions or if you take less than 100% items or transactions or accounts, then that process is known as audit sampling. The population represents the all transactions or all accounts or all items that should be audited by an auditor. And for designing the audit sampling, the auditor should consider about the sample size, and while determining the sample size, the auditor need to consider sampling risk, tolerable error, and expected error. Sampling risk or sampling error arises from the possibility that the auditor's conclusion based on the sample may be different from the conclusion that would be reached if the entire population were subjected to the same audit procedure. That means sampling risk occurs when the conclusion is different if you make a conclusion based on the sample, but if the conclusion is different whenever you make the conclusion based on the population. And the second issue for determining sampling size is tolerable error. The tolerable error is the maximum error in the population that the auditor would be willing to accept and still concludes that the result from the sample has achieved the audit objective. That means the tolerable error is the maximum error which would be accepted by the auditor at the time of making conclusion, and the expected error is the level of error predicted to be present in sample. Predicted error is known as expected error. And for designing the audit sampling, the auditor should consider the specific audit objective, population, and sample size. For selecting the sample size, there are several methods. Here we can see the common sampling methods are random selection, systematic selection, haphazard selection. For selecting the sample, there are several methods. The common methods are random method, systematic method, and haphazard method for selecting the sample. And there are two types of random selection: simple random or stratified random. In random selection, each unit has equal chance of being selected. From the population, each transaction or each account has equal chance of being selected for examination by the auditor. In stratified random sample, the population is divided into sub-population and random selection is resorted with respect to each sub-population. That means in simple random selection, each transaction or each accounts from the population has the equal chance of being selected by the auditor. In stratified random sampling, the population is divided into sub-population, and after that random selection is applied to select the items or transactions or accounts. Systematic selection involves the selection of sample units by using a constant interval. From the population, you will apply the constant interval process while selecting the items or transactions or accounts from the population. And the last one is in haphazard selection, the units may be the transactions or accounts. In haphazard selection, the units are selected according to the auditor's whims. That means auditor's choice, with no rule of random or system. That means in haphazard selection, the auditor's preference is based for selecting the sample. In this case, there is no specific rules. Auditor's choice is the main issue in haphazard selection. But there is a danger of bias in selection prompted by convenience. That means there may be a problem if there is a application of haphazard selection in case of selecting sample. The best option for sample selection is random selection. It increases the acceptability of the opinion because there is no chance of biasedness by the auditor. These are the common method for selecting the sample while applying the audit procedure by the auditor. Thank you.